Danny Segura for MMA Junkie. I'm here with former Bellator champion Juan Archuleta, who has been a little bit low key, as we were just talking about off camera, in the mixed martial arts world, and wanted to get an update on his career and everything that's going on around his life. So first of all, Juan, how are you, brother? How you been? How's life?
I'm doing good, man. Just out here getting ready for the holiday season. Just been training, kind of rebuilding myself right now. I had a great time in Japan. Won the bantamweight world title out there for Ryzen.
That's right.
Tried to
Yep.
move up to the weight class, but just kind of had like a bittersweet kind of like last year. Got to fight in front of great fans, but it's been kind of torturous with my body trying to recover from the horrific weight cuts, cutting down to 135.
Yeah. So you've obviously, as I mentioned, you've been busy in another part of the world. I know you fought a couple of times in 2024, but in the statesides in America, it's almost like two completely different worlds. Like, Japanese MMA and American MMA is vastly different.
Yeah.
Um, so let's start with this. Most people here in the States obviously know you for, your work in Bellator, being a former champion, all the great history that you have there. Since the PFL Bellator merger, where does your career stand right now? Are you still with them?
No, actually, a non-exclusive contract right now with Ryzen, which hopefully leads me into the next stage of my career. Some things pop off in UFC with Spain. Hopefully, could jump on a card like that, and I've had a huge impact in the martial arts scene out there, and that's where I'm leaning towards. But right now, on a non-exclusive contract with Ryzen.
Okay, so that means you can fight anywhere else, but like you still have fights with them. Like,
Yeah, so but I could freelance, right? Like
gotcha.
I could
Yeah.
if something bigger pops up, there's always that opportunity to take control of that.
That's awesome. And yeah, shouts out to Ryzen for that, because it almost seems like whenever one of their fighters goes to the UFC, like they celebrate it. They did that with Kai, who you fought,
Yeah.
which I want to ask you about in a bit. Um, what's that like? Because in MMA, it just seems like, as opposed to boxing, it's very everything's very exclusive, right? Like you're somewhere and you're gonna stay there for a bit.
Yeah, in the beginning part of my career, Joe Daddy Stevenson and Cub Swanson had helped me like navigate my career. And in the lower promotions, like such as King of the Cage and the other promotions that I fought for, we fought for non-exclusive deals. That way, we were able to fight in different promotions. And at the time, it wasn't really celebrated or recommended to do. But now, being in this portion of my life and being able to carry that over has been a blessing, because if bigger and better opportunities come, obviously we get to take them. But yeah, I mean, I'm super stoked with it. Japan's awesome. The fan base there was amazing, is amazing, and they really love martial arts, which I was super excited to fight for and become the first American champion for Ryzen.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I wanted to ask you sort of what happened with PFL and Bellator. Is it a thing where the merger happened and your contract had ran out, or did you decided to part ways with them? What exactly happened as to why are you no longer?
Yeah, so the whole when Scott Coker was in there, he had actually got the deal done with Ryzen to have the Ryzen versus Bellator fight happen. And then after that, they had asked me, "Hey, do you want to stay in Japan? Japan wants you to kind of fight some more of their guys." Because I did a good job of like promoting myself after the fight out there, building a fan base, and everyone wanted me to fight for the title. And at the time, for me, it was an easier way to get to a title fight than it was with Bellator. And Coker had told me, "Oh, I don't know what's going to happen with Bellator at this time. Like, there's talk of selling Viacom selling Bellator." And I was like, "Okay, I'm in a perfect spot of after losing the Stotts and then beating Barzola, and then went in there and beat their number one guy, Sucho Kim." I was like, "Well, if I could stay active for the year here, then I would definitely take advantage of it." Which in turn I did. The next guy I fought, who is now their champion in a new way. I beat him, and then I was scheduled to fight Kai Asakura. After that fight had he had
Hmm.
withdrew from the fight the week of like 2 weeks before the fight. And I was like, oh man, like what's gonna happen? Then they enter Hiromasa Ogikubo, who was an Ultimate Fighter. Took the fight on short notice, which was strange because I was coaching him on Joe Benavidez's Ultimate Fighter. So I was like, oh, I know of him, like, and I've coached with them and watched them fight Tim Elliott and Pantoja, tough fighter. And so I switched the whole game plan up. Went out there, fought, and won the title, and then defended against Kai at the end of the year. So it kept me active. You know, I was fighting more than guys in Bellator at the time. So with that transpiring, during that time after I lost, I think it was the New Year's fight this year. Bellator had said, "Hey, you know, we're gonna have to cut you." And I was like, oh, why, what happened? Like, you know, I had missed weight with the Asakura. Like it was hard for me, right? At 35, I was pretty much
Yeah.
done. And they were like, oh, well, you know, you missed weight and things. And, you know, we just got to let you go because you're not going to plan on fighting at bantamweight anymore. And just at this time, I was transitioning of firing my manager. And then I was looking to move forward with my career throughout with my own hands because you know I kind of seen like things were coming to a halt, and so I was like, okay, like if that's the case, you know, I'm gonna move up to 145 at Ryzen. You know, I went out there and did a deal with them, a non-exclusive deal with them, and they were more than happy to have me. And so Bellator just seemed like there wasn't too many fights, you know, many and PFL,
Yeah.
Bellator slash PFL. They weren't having activity for fighters such as the Gegard Mousasi
Hmm.
era. So I didn't raise no arms about it. I was kind of like more happy than bitter about being let go from them because it was like, man, I don't know, you know, not too many people are fighting. So, and I
Yeah.
stayed active that whole year. I fought 4 times, you know. So that's where that led into with Bellator and the PFL.
Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, that's something else that I wanted to ask you. Like they decided, I guess, not to keep you around, but you mentioned like you're somewhat happy with that, right? Or did you want it, or did you hope to be part of their plans? Like I don't know, in the tournament or that Bellator Championship Series. I'm guessing it sounds like you're cool with the way things turned out.
Yeah. Well, when I fought in Japan, right, it's like every martial artist's dream to fight out there. And then when you get out there and you see the fan base and you see the way they put on their shows, the events, you know, it's not just it's just not just a fight. It's a whole performance when you get out there and you like. I encourage all MMA fighters to go, or even fans to go to Japan and watch an event because everything there is theatrical. They make sure you're getting your money's worth and like it just like was a promising look for my career going forward at
Yeah.
that point. And dude, it was amazing. It was the best time I've had in my life, fighting in front of fans and things like that. I haven't fought in front of UFC fans and like the theatrics there as a fighter, but definitely Ryzen has been one of the best shows that I fought for.
Yeah. By the way, your walkouts are fucking sick at Rising. I was like, yep,
Yeah.
we need more of that in MMA. I know Bellator kind of embraced that a little bit. The UFC doesn't at all, but in Rising, those look dope. Um,
Yeah, thank you.
and what are your overall thoughts on? I guess if you can kind of remove yourself a little bit from like your experience, if it's even possible, because I know that's hard to do. But overall, like as far as like what's going on in the industry, like the whole Bellator PFL thing is like huge news, right? We went from
Yeah.
having like three sort of top promotions to now two. And as I told you, like while we were texting, like it's worked out great for some people. Like some people are ripping it, it's killing it. But for some others, as you mentioned Gegard Mousasi and others, like this hasn't really worked out. As a fighter in the industry, like do you see this as good? And how have you graded so far sort of
Yeah.
PFL's merger with Bellator? You think has been overall positive or
Yeah.
not?
Well, here's the thing that like was I think super unfortunate for a lot of the fighters. They redid a lot of people's deals before
Yeah.
the sale, right? Because they didn't know who was staying on and who wasn't. Like my deal got renegotiated and it was a lot of money and I was like, "Oh man, like this is awesome. Like if PFL could keep these numbers going and
Mhm.
keep us fighting as active as Coker was keeping us active, then 100% this is going to work out for fighters, you know." Um But then when the merger did happen, and some of the guys stayed on, and they were like, "Oh, sorry, like this is what it is, and you're getting cut." Like me, I didn't care. I had my out, right? But it was very unfortunate for guys like Emmanuel Sanchez, and
Mhm.
and the reason why I used him because he was a good fighter and a very active fighter for
Yep.
Bellator, but got cut, and it was just like, man, Emmanuel's an entertaining fighter,
Yeah,
and
put
then
some
you have
bangers
guys
in
like
there.
Sergio Pettis, who I fought, right? Hadn't really fought that much. And then you had Stotts, even Patchy Mix. And then you have James Gallagher. And then Aaron Pico, who's been active. Archie Colgan, who's been active, luckily. But from what I've seen, they had to take certain pay cuts for certain guys to be able to stay active, and it was just like, man, like they didn't offer it to everyone, like even Cyborg's situation, right? Like she
Mm.
barely fought Lisa Pacheco just recently, right? And
Yep.
it was like she was campaigning for a fight for a very long time, right? And it was just like they put us in a situation that was set up a lot of fighters to fail, or to gain, right? And
Mhm.
so it was like, man, that was tough to see. And for me, I had my out, and I was very fortunate.
Yeah. I guess my main me speaking personally, like my main issues with like the whole thing was like one, they had promised originally that they weren't gonna cut anyone, that everyone was gonna join, and that wasn't the case. A lot of people were
Right.
let go.
Yeah.
Um Two, the whole point of the merger was sort of to get all these badass fights and make sort of a stronger product, right? But they've kind of
Right.
kept the two separate. So it's like, what's kind of the point? I know there's probably a lot more behind that, like TV deals and stuff they still have going on with Bellator. So I
Yeah.
guess they can't fully like merge the rosters, but that's one thing as a fan that we are hoping to see, and we didn't get to see. But hopefully they get all those things like sorted out. Um, and I guess what's your plan moving forward? You have a non-exclusive deal with Ryzen, so you got that going on. But like you mentioned, there's interest for you to go to the UFC, especially if they were to put on a show in Spain. You've obviously been very vocal throughout the years about your Spanish heritage, and you've always repped that. Is that something you're actively campaigning? Like, what sort of the plan look like from here on?
Well, right now, again, I jumped into jumping at featherweight and trying to be a featherweight full time now, and
Okay, so done
you,
with bantamweight.
yeah, done with bantamweight. And it was very like, dude, I'm telling you, I needed 12 weeks every time to cut down, or to be told like, hey, you're fighting right after this fight, so make sure
Mhm.
you stay active. Sometimes that wasn't the case, and it's just like, all right, you're starting that weight cut down at 175. Just because for me, I work out a lot, and my muscles after a fight need to be fed. And when they're fed, my body just like grows, and because we're working out 3, 4 times a day, and then you're in a caloric deficit. And then when you feed your muscles are like, oh man, I'm going to absorb all this. Right.
Yeah.
And so, the fluctuation that's why it took its toll on me. But now it's like, okay, build myself at featherweight. I signed with Cub Swanson and another guy that's part of the program, Bloodline Management. We have a great team right now that we're building up. We have two guys coming up on December 6th for the LFA,
Mhm.
155 and 145 title fights here in Commerce in LA. And we're looking forward to building a good surrounding around us. You know, we a lot of us fighters, like, we're we were so used to like almost like degenerate fighters that never made it, always telling us what to do or what should be. And it's like, well, you never been put into this position, so how can you tell us that we should be acting these ways going forward? Where now you have guys like Cub Swanson, Joe Stevenson, Dan Henderson, these guys that have been part of this game for so long, and literally built the foundation for MMA, who are now getting into coaching and management, where they see the side. They just don't look at you at a paycheck. They're saying, okay, like, how can we help these guys to kind of deviate from being taken advantage of as fighters? Like the George St. Pierre situation
Mm.
when he was coming up, and then he had to sue his manager because she was taking money from him, and like all these things that we're trying to eliminate as fighters for the future fighters coming up behind us, to lay a proper road work. So that's my vision going forward, and how I want to impact the sport going forward is kind of like getting rid of guys that are trying to take advantage of these
Yeah.
fighters, or just like, oh, I have this roster of 300 guys, and we could put these matchmaking together, because we're gonna have our guys fight each other. And you
Yeah.
hear that constant horror story a lot, right? And it's just like, Man, there's so many fighters out there. Why can't we just keep this steam rolling? Which Dana White, I think, is doing a great job of trying to be as active as he can to put as many fighters as he can, and signing a plethora of fighters to keep them active. And so, our job going forward as veterans of the sport is to help those younger guys. So
Yeah.
that's another process that I'm looking to getting into. As well as just rebuilding right now. I'm 0-3 in my last
Right.
three fights. That's the first time I've gone 0-3 for a while. But I've seen it done before, and that's why I very strongly hold myself around Cub Swanson, because he's been in this position before. Like, he's like, man, I feel like I'm the best I've ever been in my career. And he just hit the skid, and I've seen him pull himself out of it. So surrounding myself around people that have been in a position of mine and that have overcame that are how to set goals, how to mentally stay sharp, and how to be prepared for the what's next to come.
Yeah. But in terms of like the UFC, like, is that something like for now, like you want to rebuild yourself, but is that a goal of yours, like a 1 point fight for the UFC, or if it
Yeah, I mean,
happens, it happens, or how do
yeah,
you
I
view
mean,
it?
at this point now, it's just like I would love to get into the UFC and kind of make that last hoorah that I have. I'm
Yeah.
37 years old now. I don't know if they would sign someone that I feel like I'm the best I've ever been in my career right now, and giving hope to Michael Venom Page getting released and then signing with Venom or with
Yeah.
UFC
Right.
kind of gives me that structure of saying, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe they will sign me, and I have a strong name, I have a strong fan base, and I can come and bring exciting fights.
Yeah, for sure. And at featherweight right now, featherweight's hot right now in the UFC, which I want to ask you about in a second. Um, and has you're a veteran, dude, and you like have so many. You've trained with so many like top level guys. You've been cornering like UFC events. Like people know you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like, have you ever heard interest from the UFC? Have you ever talked to one of the matchmakers or a Hunter
Yeah,
or
we
somebody?
we were we were literally on the verge of signing with the UFC, and then it was either UFC or Bellator, and they're like, "Oh, where do you want to go?" And I was like, maybe we can maybe we could go to Bellator first, and then from there, we will we will transition into UFC. Well, Bellator went so well and things were
Yeah,
happening. I fought for the title at featherweight, fought for the title at bantamweight, and then things just started steamrolling. I was like, oh, I'm in a good position right now. I don't need to leave. And so it was either UFC or Bellator we were going to sign with, and then the UFC and then Bellator made the better option for me at that point.
yeah, nice. Um, what would it mean to you if you were to join the UFC, fight for the UFC, and not only that, I mean, the rumors of an event in Spain for next year are very, very, they're
Likely.
growing a lot, and it seems,
Yeah.
especially with Topuria now knocking out Holloway, like that seems to be becoming a reality. Um, it's not far fetched that you end up there. Like I think if I were in charge of the UFC, like you got a lot of real estate and stock with that fan base. Um,
Mhm.
having the Spaniard out there, I don't think it'd be a bad idea. What would that mean to you to fight for the UFC and fight in Spain?
For me, it'll be a dream come true, right? Like, definitely, where I've fought for every top promotion, and just to go and just stake my name, just to see, like, to close off my career and end it there would be a dream come true, a
Yeah.
100%.
And when you mean like close out your career, like have you thought about like how many years or fights you want to log in before? Or
Well, right now, again, I put it around myself around people that I've known and trust for a very long time, with such as Cub Swanson, who just turned 41 or 40, I believe,
yeah,
this Saturday. Happy birthday to him, right?
shouts out.
Who has a big fight coming up in Tampa in December, 14th, I think
Mhm.
the
Yeah,
event
I
is.
think I'll be there.
Yeah, me too. So we'll
Okay,
be
sick.
cornering him.
Yeah,
So he is my goal setter of like who I want to be as a fighter and who I want to mold my career as. So I would like to go to that age, and stay active as much as I can. Because I'm an active fighter. I love doing it. I love practicing what I preach, right, to upcoming fighters, and not just that, my kids and my nephews who look up to me a lot. So that's the goal. Like, just my body feels good, and I'm looking forward to that. When
nice.
when the day comes, I will shut the doors though.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, man. And I want to ask you outside of your career, like you've obviously fought Kai Asakura, fairly recent, right? Like in New Year's. and he's now joining the UFC. He's fighting at flyweight though, so I was always curious. Like, he hasn't made flyweight since like 2017. When you fought him, did you feel him lighter? Did you feel like that's a weight class that he could fight down? I was surprised that he was going down to 125 and not fighting 135.
Yeah, I think he's very explosive. It seems like he's really getting his body in tune. Last time I seen him when I was in Japan last, he was a lot smaller than when we fought, and I was like, "Oh yeah,
Mm,
you're doing well," And I just reached out to him last night actually because he was posting some Instagram pictures. I was like, "Hey, how you feeling?" He's like, "Oh, I'm so ready. I'm so excited." And this is a new venture for him. This is something that he wanted and wanted to do going forward, and I'm super excited. I mean, and it's a title fight right off the back, like. Not
yeah,
many guys get a title fight in the UFC right off the bat, and so it's like, go get it, man. You have the tools and the athleticism to go get it done, and I think he's well prepared now. I think he got down to a weight class. Japanese guys aren't very like dense in their muscles, but they have very explosive. You've seen it in the wrestling this year
yeah,
this year in the Olympics. They've gold medaled so many guys and women. And so they have the athleticism to compete at a high level, and I'm super excited to see that.
yeah. And what have been your thoughts on Ilia Topuria at 135? Like, somebody that's, well, Georgian, but like lives in Spain and represents Spain. Like, how has that been to like witness? Because you've obviously represented Spain like for so long and been proud of your heritage. And like, Spain is a very historically speaking, a very underrepresented country in MMA. And all of a sudden now there's like this huge boom, and also in your weight class. Like,
Yeah, it's amazing, and he had constantly had reached out to me to go train out there with them in Alicante, but it was
mhm,
just like, man, I at the time I was cutting down 35, and I was doing the bantamweight tournament for Bellator, and I got hit with the title fight right away, and so I was like, hey man, sorry, I'm not gonna be able to come out and train with you guys. And then that fight happened. Then I had to take some time off because obviously got rocked. And then so I had to take time off, and then I fought Barzola, and then it just started steamrolling events with fight after fight after fight. So I never got to make it out there to train with them and get him ready. And then he came out here to Anaheim when he was going to fight Evolov, that
mhm.
fight in Anaheim, but they ended up both pulling out, and then he ended up not doing it, not taking the fight. And so we were supposed to connect and kind of train there, and things that happened on his case. So, you know, um, but yeah, the influence that I have out there, and to see guys like that succeed, and give confidence to such a great generation of fighters that known for their fighting ability, but kind of lacked the confidence, gave them that much more confidence going forward. That, hey, why can't it be you?
Yeah, 100%. All right, man. Well, I don't want to steal any more time away from you. You've been too kind, but thanks for this update. Now we know like what's
Yeah,
up,
we're
and
ready. Yeah.
hopefully, you get some fights lined up soon, and would love
Yeah.
to see you in the UFC in 2025. I think that'd
Well,
be
I
that'd be cool.
appreciate it. Yeah, and now I'm looking forward to it. And thank you for having me on.